X-Men Days of Future Past is a 2014 superhero film directed and co-produced by Bryan Singer and written by Simon Kinberg from a story by Simon Kinberg, Jane Goldman, and Matthew Van Gunn. What's good? It's a Boy Dude Reviews, and today we are going to review the seventh film in the X-Men film series. And um, yeah, let's get on and talk about this masterpiece of a movie. A British American venture, the film is based on the fictional X-Men characters that appear in Marvel Comics, and it acts as a sequel to both X-Men The Last Stand and X-Men First Class, and also The Wolverine. And what's the story all about? Well, convinced that mutants pose a threat to humanity, Dr. Bolivia Trask, played by Peter Dinklage, develops the Sentinels, enormous robotic weapons that can detect a mutant gene and zero in onto that person. In the 21st centuries, the Sentinels have evolved into highly efficient killing machines. With the mutants now facing extinction, Wolverine volunteers to go back in time and rally the X-Men of the past to help change a pivotal moment in history and thereby save their future. And the story, inspired by the 1981 Uncanny X-Men storyline Days of Future Past by Chris Claremont and John Byrne, focuses on two time periods, with Wolverine traveling back to 1973 to change history and prevent an event that results in doom for both humans and mutants. And the film features an assembled cast including Hugh Jackman, James McAvoy, Michael Fassbender, Jennifer Lawrence, Halle Berry, Anna Paquin, Ellen Page, Peter Dinklage, Ian McKellen, and Patrick Stewart. And Matthew Van Gunn had directed X-Men First Class and was set to return Days of Future Past before leaving for Kingsman: The Secret Service. First, Bryan Singer, who had directed the first two X-Men films, made his return as a director and brought along most of the crew from those productions. With the budget of $205 million, photography began in Montreal, Quebec in April 2013 and concluded in August the same year. And the film premiered in New York City on May 10, 2014 and was theatrically released on May 23rd by 20th Century Fox, and it is the second best reviewed X-Men film in the X-Men series following Logan, drawing favorable notices for its story, visual effects, action scenes, acting, thematical elements, and Bryan Singer's direction. Jennifer Lawrence's performance as Mystique was particularly lauded by critics, with some regarding it as one of Jennifer Lawrence's career's bests. During its theatrical run, the film earned $747 million worldwide, making it the sixth highest-grossing film of 2014, as well as the second highest-grossing film in the series behind Deadpool. And the film received an Academy Award for Best Visual Effects, making it the first X-Men to be nominated for an Oscar. And yeah, this film has literally been praised to death. Like, a lot of people have absolutely spoken very highly about this film, like praising the heck out of it. And there's so much good to talk about. So let's get straight into the good. And the good of this film is definitely Bryan Singer's direction. Bryan Singer returns to the X-Men franchise since X-Men 2, and he brings back what the X-Men lost for so many years, that flair. That X-Men flair. I feel like Matthew Van Gunn kind of reignited that flair with First Class, and obviously Bryan Singer kind of ignited it even more with Days of Future Past. And this film was like, it felt like X-Men. He brought back all the original crew members who worked on the first two X-Men films with him, as well as all the old cast coming back. And it was so cool seeing the original cast all back in their glory. It was so many, how many years has it been? Since about 8 years since the old cast, and it was just so cool seeing it. It was a great reunion seeing all these guys back, and they literally did their darnest. Ian McKellen and Patrick Stewart were amazing as Magneto and Professor X of the future, and they did a great performance. And it's so interesting and different seeing those two work together and be chummy buddies. And it's nice seeing how both of them, especially Magneto, kind of regrets fighting constantly, and in a way he's kind of like he's kind of like missing the days of when they were fighting, instead of like seeing their own kind being wiped out along with the humans. It's quite sad, to be honest with you. And James McAvoy and Michael Fassbender play, we saw them in X-Men First Class, and they do it even better. James McAvoy is definitely one of the highlights of this film. He absolutely steps his game because this is the Xavier of like 10 years after the First Class movie, where he's a broken Xavier. Like, everyone has left him to fight in the Vietnam War. Many of his friends were killed in the war. Eric abandoned him. Mystique Raven has gone off doing her thing. And he just feels left alone and abandoned. And he's just so angry and he's so sad. And James McAvoy really does play this broken Xavier really well. And it's so great. Michael Fassbender as Eric also does a really good job, you know. He's also always great. But Jennifer Lawrence as well, this is definitely her best performance, I would say. Like, one of her best performances. She does a great job as Katniss in the Hunger Games films, but my gosh, was she amazing as Mystique in this film. Like, critics really did praise Jennifer Lawrence in this film the most because she did a damn good job of this film. Like, I was just kind of blown away by how amazing and cool she was in this film, playing the young Raven. And it was just quite mind-blowing seeing her performance. She's a great actress. And Hugh Jackman also comes back, and he kind of acts like the he's kind of like the guardian angel to the young Professor X, guiding him, helping him, you know, get back on track. And it's kind of nice seeing how Wolverine Logan is kind of helping Professor X, like the young version. And that kind of also leads on to the next film with Logan, and we'll get to that film later on. And it's really nice seeing. I mean, this is definitely, in my opinion, Hugh Jackman's most relaxed role as the Wolverine, and he's not as like violent and aggressive as he usually is, but we'll get to that later. And all the other cast do a great job. It was so great seeing Ellen Page return as Kitty Pryde. It was so great to see Halle Berry return as Storm. It was so great to see Sean Ashman return as Bobby Iceman. And it was just so cool seeing how all grown up these guys were and how they, how much they changed, and it was just so great and just amazing. The visual effects in this film is definitely the best in any X-Men film up to date. It looked phenomenal and it was mind-blowing, particularly the scene set in the future. The Sentinels flying and the attacks and the special effects and the visual effects are just absolutely amazing. This movie just kicks off and it just kind of starts into overgear. It's just like full throttle from the moment the film starts to it ends. It's just non-stop epicness. And it doesn't leave you bored at all because there's always something interesting happening with characters. And this film is just a huge win for me. A massive, gigantic win. The score was amazing, and I love how they brought back the original theme for X-Men 2. And it was just phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. The villain of this film, I mean, who would you consider the villain of this film? Mystique, Trask, and maybe Stryker. Stryker, he was played by Josh Hillman, and he played a pretty decent job of this Stryker. And yeah, I feel like he looks a little bit too young considering the timeline, but that's fine. Peter Dinklage as the Trask guy was really great as well. And another surprise person who really did great was Evan Peters as Quicksilver. He was a considerably better Quicksilver than the one we got in Avengers Age of Ultron, and this guy was so much more enjoyable and fun to look at, and they kept him more closely to the comics than they did with the Avengers Quicksilver, and he gets one of the coolest scenes in any X-Men film up to date. This scene was one of the best scenes I have ever seen in a Marvel film for me. This scene and the Apocalypse scene. I think I like this scene a little bit more just because it took me off guard and it was just flipping amazing. It was just whoa. It was flipping amazing. And this film is just absolutely mind-blowing. The plot is amazing. I love how urgent the plot feels and how the characters are just in this hurry and this rush, and it has this urgency and it's just non-stop. Left, right, up, down, here we go, center. It's just like, it is absolutely non-stop action, and golly, it doesn't even let you. There are times where you can breathe. I think that Quicksilver scene kind of left us to breathe, in a way. But crikey, it was just amazing, absolutely amazing. And golly, I mean, the only mixed aspect, and it's probably the only negative, and it's not really a negative, but it's more a mixed aspect, and it's definitely Wolverine. Now, Wolverine is amazing in this film, don't get me wrong, but I feel like he was not as, like, he played a role in this film, but I don't feel like, he was there as much as they could have needed him. I mean, they kind of used him as the guardian angel, the guy kind of guiding Professor X, but I mean, he wasn't as violent as he was in the previous movies, and I suppose that makes sense in a way, because he knows that what he's doing is going to help the future, so he's kind of calm in a way. But that's my only mixed aspect of the film. My negatives, it's quite hard to point out negatives of this film, but yeah, I mean, no, this film does explain a lot. The thing I also love about this film, we'll get back to positives, is that it kind of fixes the mistakes of the previous movies. And I'm talking about The Last Stand particularly, because The Last Stand made some issues that a lot of fans, including myself, were not happy. I did a whole rant on that video I made a few days ago on like the mistakes that The Last Stand made, and those mistakes really affected the X-Men series dearly. But this film was able to fix those mistakes so well that I feel like the X-Men are coming back on top now. And because they fixed those mistakes, we actually had, without spoiling too much, a satisfying ending. And if you don't know what that ending is, go and watch the film right now, because I'm going to spoil it right now in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I absolutely love the ending where all the X-Men of the original cast all return in the X-Men mansion, and it has this kind of like dream-like happy feel to it, and it's like Wolverine just waking up after like a bad dream, and you see Jean Grey alive and well, you see Scott Summers, you see Rogue, you see Beast, you see Storm, you see Professor X. Oh my gosh, it's just everyone is just there, everyone is back to normal. It's kind of emotional. It was a very emotional ending, to be honest with you, and obviously that ending did leave a lot of questions as to how did that all happen. And we've got 2 films to kind of fill in the blank, Apocalypse and Dark Phoenix, which I'll watch in a few days time. But I mean, what more can I talk about X-Men Days of Future Past? X-Men Days of Future Past is not only the best X-Men movie, it is definitely one of the best Marvel films and one of the best comic book heroes films, because it does things that takes risks. It's executed well, it's written really well. Simon Kinberg, this is your best written screenplay to date for the X-Men, and for that, X-Men Days of Future Past deserves an A star and a 10 out of 10. I highly recommend watching this on Blu-ray because it looks fantastic. There is nothing to hate about this film, it's amazing. It was a little bit disappointing not seeing Rogue as much, because she was originally meant to be in the film a lot more, but there were so many things happening that they had to cut certain characters out. I would have liked to see a little bit more of Storm as well. She was just kind of there, and Barbie as well. But I mean, there's so many characters you can put in this movie, so I was fine with it, to be honest with you. This is a film for the next generation of X-Men. But thank you for watching this review. Please like, share the video, and comment down below and tell me what's your favorite X-Men flick, because this is my favorite. And with that said, thank you for watching. As always, Avoided Reviews signing out.